What's your opinion on General Motors going bankrupt? Now the government owns 60% of General Motors. Obama asking the CEO to step down. We've got our government getting involved in what's supposed to be private enterprise. Do you see this as just something that's going to continue, have a large ripple effect? What's your opinion of the automakers? Does the rest of the economy follow suit after the automakers collapse?
Maybe in some respects the economy might. The demise of Chrysler and General Motors, and for that matter Ford, was planned in the early 1960s. This is not something that just happened. It was done deliberately. And Chrysler should have been taken into bankruptcy 7 years ago. And General Motors should have been taken into bankruptcy about 5 years ago. Now we've come to this being a government takeover of a segment of the manufacturing industry. So it would be called now, I guess, Government Motors, for lack of a better name. And it puts Ford in a very difficult position, because if the federal government is supplying an endless amount of funds for at least General Motors, because assumably Fiat will be taking over Chrysler, and good luck to them. The situation with General Motors is somewhat different, and I don't know, excuse me, that you've heard the last of this General Motors bankruptcy takeover affair, because what they did is they took over the pension and health care plans for the retirees, and they gave them stock. And if you read the 1974 ERISA Act, you'll find that under the law that cannot be done. And I believe that will be challenged. Perhaps not by the labor unions, because they're in on it, but others. And that whole thing could be brought to a screeching halt. And what the outcome would be, I don't know. But as we all know, it is not the business of government to bail out companies, nor our financial system. And anybody who goes bankrupt should be allowed to go bankrupt. It's pretty simple. And the bondholders get paid first, then the suppliers get paid second, and if there's anything left over, the common shareholders would get paid, and that almost never happens. And so government has interceded and divvied the thing up and poured money into it, our money, our taxpayer dollars, and they've made a complete mess out of it. Now Ford can't really compete because they don't have access to what the General Motors has, which is unlimited funds. Another thing here is that if you notice with the General Motors deal, that their best assets are being hived off. They're not part of the bankruptcy, and that is the plants in China and Brazil and Saturn. And so this whole thing is nothing but highway robbery, and they're going to get away with it. And they're just dumber than dumb, and I don't know what's going to wake them up. If anything, probably an empty stomach is the only thing that's going to work. And but this is the situation with Ford, and it's an illegal operation. Ford, with General Motors, and it's an illegal operation. I think Ford will survive, and they run their company quite well, and they may need money in the future, but for the time being, they're not doing badly.
We're coming up on a break, Mr. Chapman. Stay with us. We will be back with Bob Chapman, theinternationalforecasters.com, in 3 minutes. You're listening to The Real News on WSIC 1400, WDSL 1520, the Liberty News Radio Network. you.
RealNewsRadio.com. We're joined by Bob Chapman of the InternationalForecaster.com. Mr. Chapman, we had Secretary Geithner in China earlier this week. There's a story here. This one in particular is by Paul Craig Roberts, in which the Chinese literally laughed at him when he said he stood for a strong dollar. What's your opinion on that?
Well, it was the children, the students at Beijing University, and of course they're outside the box. They're kids, they're bright, and they've obviously taken notice of what's been going on. And the act by them, which was hilarity, laughter, jeering, booing, and was very derisive, and Geithner had to be stupid to put himself in that kind of a position, because it really wasn't necessary. There's ways you could have approached it without coming out and saying, trust me, everything's going to be okay with the dollar. He could have got around it. And he's made a lot of mistakes in his career, and he's certainly not the man for the job. But then again, if they bring somebody else from Wall Street, it's going to be the same thing over and over again anyway. The idea is to close the revolving door between banking and Wall Street and our government, at least to a great extent. The problem is that government, it has been for a long time, run from Wall Street, and it's got to stop, because they're looting the American people, and now they virtually destroyed our economy deliberately. And the finance situation is such that all of the money that's been created out of thin air has gone to the financial system, their friends, so to speak, and very little has filtered down to the average American. I guess this $250 checks is something we should be very happy about and worship Washington for, but 90% of it's being used to pay off bills, incidentally, and it's not going to help one bit. But the Geithner thing is all part of a big package that we've been talking about, and that is they don't know what to do. They have to create money and credit until it won't work anymore.
Well, I wanted to, this being our last segment, Mr. Chapman, I wanted to make sure we got it in for people, how to get in touch with you and get your international forecast each week, because just like this past week, what you had wrote as the dollar falls, inflation rises, it is some great information that you put out, and you just nail it on the economy time and time again. So before we go to any more questions, so we be sure and get this in, tell our listeners how they can get in touch with your website and get in touch with you and get this information each week.
Well, they can get a free introductory copy. It's the publication's about business, finance, economics, social and political issues all over the world. They can go to our site, theinternationalforecaster.com, theinternationalforecaster.com. You can email us. That address is bob@intforecaster.com, bob@intforecaster.com, or toll free 800-375-4188. That's 800-375-4188. We also have a hard copy that goes out twice a month for those who are not on the internet, so you can either get the hard copy, or you can get the email copy, which is published twice a week, runs 35 or 40 pages each time.